Hello, everyone, and welcome. Pete Jones from Betfair here, and I'm joined by political trader Tavis Rendell to discuss the outlook on the US election and potential betting opportunities. Tavis, great to see you again.
You too, Pete. Great to be back this week. How you doing down there?
Doing really well, mate. Who could have predicted the events of the last couple of weeks since we last caught up and the situation we now find ourselves in?
It's an old cliche that a week is a lifetime in American politics, and nowhere has that been more true during the Trump era. So, for sure, it feels like a lifetime ago that the presidential debate occurred, which was just a couple of weeks, and a lot could have happened in that short space of time, and it certainly did.
Yeah, it's certainly going to get interesting, but we've got a big show today and a lot to get through. Our main focus in this episode will be on the state markets, where Tavis, understand you'll be previewing two big swing states and sharing your opinion on which way these will fall. And also hear that you have your up-to-date electoral college map, which you'll be sharing with the viewers and predicting which states will fall red or blue. So looking forward to that. But firstly, we're going to dive straight into the recent news and how this has had an impact on the next president market. Let me just get the market up here. So as you can see, Donald Trump, he's trading around that $3 mark. Prior to being hospitalized with COVID, he was around the $2.70 mark. So he has drifted even further since then. So health-wise, Trump has either made a miraculous recovery or he's putting on a very brave face. How do you see that? Which one is the more likely?
Well, so this past 2 weeks has certainly been an embodiment of the past 4 years of this era of American politics. And not only did we have a pretty explosive presidential debate filled with interruptions galore, but we had a hospitalization of the president of the United States. Normally, that would be a show-stopping, world-stopping event, but it was really over and done with pretty fast. It was over within 3 or 4 days, and this is what led to the movement in your market, as you can see there. Trump really drifted out after the debate. He drifted out further after his hospitalization, and now you're starting to see things normalize. It's hard to believe that it happened so fast. Normally, a 74-year-old overweight man is not able to recover from this so fast, and he's already backstage in rallies. He's already back out on the campaign trail. All this within a 10-day span, mind you. So things have really sort of snapped back into place as faster than people expected, and the market's starting to show that.
Has this had an impact in the latest polls? What's the latest from the polls that you're reading?
It has a little bit, yeah. And then this is typical of what happens after the debate. Now, it's difficult to pinpoint the singular reason, because his hospitalization happened so fast after the debate. So you sort of had a double whammy of Trump underperforming in his first debate, then his COVID hospitalization. Subsequently, you saw a few national polls with Biden out to huge leads, 12, 14, 16%, even in one poll. There's no way Joe Biden's ahead by 12 points nationally right now, and let alone 16. So what you're starting to see is things come back to, again, where they have been all along, this sort of frozen in ice type of race, where you have that average 7, 8, 9-point national lead for Joe Biden, which is, to be sure, a really impressive, comfortable lead. But he hasn't put the race away yet, which is why there's so many Democrats are nervous. So I think you're seeing things start to restore themselves post-debate, post-Trump hospitalization from COVID. Things are starting to revert to norm, and you're seeing that in the market and the polls.
With the recovery that he's made from being hospitalized, is there the potential that he could come out of this looking like a hero and I guess maybe swing the polls back, not quite in his favor, but at least minimize that gap in the polls?
Great question, and there was that opportunity. I think that's gone now. I think he had that 4 or 5 day window where he could have acted upon it, but Trump's a one message kind of guy. He's not one to change the script. He hasn't changed the script in 4 years. He's sticking on brand, really just ignoring the virus, saying that if he's adopting the "if I can beat it, so can you" type approach, and really just carrying on with his rallies without any mask wearing or social distancing, just plowing ahead as if it never happened. So I think that moment of to issue a clarion call for national unity or change course is gone now, and he's doubling down on his existing strategy with his base.
Sure. We all know what happened 4 years ago when he was behind in the polls. And I believe around 3 to 4 weeks out, he was about the same distance behind Hillary Clinton. How far do you think he will need to close the gap to be a genuine chance of being re-elected?
Not by much. And I think this is what a lot of people are not really appreciating in their forecasts. If the election were held today, yeah, I think Joe Biden would win, but races do typically tighten. Not a guarantee, but I still expect that it will eventually. And he really wouldn't need to close the gap that much. As you note, almost 4 years ago, probably a week ago, was the anniversary of the infamous Access Hollywood tape. That was really viewed as, in the polling and in punditry, as Trump's low point of the race, at which many Republicans walked away from him. Even the RNC was considering dropping him from the ticket at this late stage, even considering that he'd have to drop out of the race. The notion that he could even win wasn't even Reince Priebus, the chairman of the RNC at the time, didn't even consider winning at that point. It all but written Trump off. And slowly but surely, he began to regain his footing and close the gap enough. Hillary's leading the polls nationally wasn't all that much by election day, probably around 3 points. And she only underperformed that by a little bit. The national polls weren't that far off in 2016. So how much would he need to close the gap with Joe Biden? I would say if he can generate enough momentum to swing this from an 8-point national lead down to a 4 to 5 point national lead, Biden would be in real trouble. Panic would rightly ensue, not just because Democrats are used to live in fear of blowing a lead in close races, but I think it would be a real race because a national lead doesn't always translate into a big lead in swing states, and that's what you're seeing right now in the polls. So I'd say about a 3 or 4 point shift, and you got yourself a coin flip.
Right. So even if Biden still maintained a 4 to 5 point lead over Trump going into the election day, would you consider that a coin flip in the market, 50-50 that could go either way, or would you actually say that would then be in Trump's favor?
That would depend on what we see in the swing state polling, but I'd expect that to tighten as well if the national polling does. They usually move in tandem. And if he's able to gain enough ground in certain swing states, yeah, I think he'd be in real danger. You have to remember here, Republicans currently, as it's not always been the case in American politics, but they do have right now an inherent structural advantage built into the Electoral College. A Democrat right now needs to win by as much as 3 or 4 or 5 points, perhaps even more, to get over that built-in advantage in the battleground states over which this election is currently being fought. So he'll need to close the gap a few points, but to be a true coin flip, I think a 4 point race nationally for Biden, you're looking at a coin flip.
Let's touch on the first of the presidential debates, which you mentioned now. Seems like a long time ago. In our most recent episode, you made a very good point that the incumbent president historically performs poorly in the first of the debates, which was no different this time around. And you advised our viewers to trade the swings on this market. How has that played out when it comes to the polls?
So what we really saw from Trump in the first debate, I guess you can't really call it a, quote, underperformance. This was more of just let's set off as many firecrackers in a 90-minute time period and it's over talk and interrupt Joe Biden and create as much static on the stage as we possibly can. Maybe that was his strategy. It was not well received in subsequent polling and snap polling and who won. Again, it's hard to really characterize a winner or loser in a debate where there was no one really got to talk, including the moderator.
I think you generally have both sides walking away thinking that they've won.
Sure, and they'll spin it as such. But as for Trump, yeah, I think it certainly didn't help him. It may not have been a debate, a classic underperformance, as you saw from George Bush in his first debate against Kerry in 2004 or Obama against Romney in 2012. But nevertheless, you got that dip in the polls. This is ignoring Trump's hospitalization for the moment. And you got a dip in the markets. The markets really reacted to the debate, even more than I thought they would. I did advise our viewers in our last episode to buy the swings. And hopefully they did. And you definitely could have traded out for a profit on Trump.
So what's the situation with the upcoming debates? So we've recently had the VP debate. I understand that Donald Trump has refused to debate Biden over unless in person. They're scheduling two more upcoming debates. Are they going ahead at this point?
Only one of them will be. Trump, as of now, there was supposed to be one on the 15th because they really had no way to guarantee Trump wouldn't be positive for COVID by then. And again, that's only Thursday here in the US in such a short space of time. To ensure the safety of Biden, the moderator, and the audience, the debate commission said that's going to have to be virtual. Trump campaign rejected that, so that debate will not be taking place. All we're going to have is we're just going to have one more debate, and that'll be on October 22nd. That, to me, that's really the last hurdle, milestone on the calendar that represents Trump's last chance to change the trajectory of the race. I don't know what he could do. If you thought the first debate was explosive, buckle up for the second one. I'm not sure what he'll try, but he's going to have to try something to shake things up. This has been a really steady lead for Joe Biden. And again, this is important to note. This isn't going to be a steady lead where we say, okay, let's see where it holds up on election day. The election is ongoing. Okay, early voting is underway. The election is in-person and mail-in voting is occurring in many states, mostly all the swing states right now. Okay, so for every day that passes with Joe Biden in the lead, Trump's got to catch up by the amount that he's already lost.
Yep.
And by November 1st, by election day, about over 70% of the electorate will have already voted. So because it's such an atypical year, you can't just look at November 3rd, okay, that's the day where everybody votes. Not how it works. It's really more like a gradual election month, whereas the longer Biden maintains this lead, the more danger Trump could be.
Yep. Yeah, I just saw in the news earlier that that in Texas there were queues for miles for people looking to get in and lodge their early votes. So what sort of percentage would you expect? Percentage of votes would you expect to be lodged prior to the election day on November 3rd? Is it with the current situation? Would you say that people are more keen to get in there before the day of the election, just to avoid the queues and to avoid the potential, dangerous COVID situation that might?
Sure. Now, I'm sorry, Pete. Are you talking about in certain states or nationally? What level?
Nationally.
What percentage of the vote do I expect to be cast?
Yeah, nationally.
Nationally, about 70%. About 70% of the vote more will be cast by election. Will have already been cast by election day, and that's on November 3rd. Yeah.
All right. So Trump really is running out of time here. He's going to close the gap. So getting back to the upcoming debate, you tipped the viewers into a really good trading opportunity last time. Do you see anything with this? With the upcoming debate that viewers should look for, or any opportunities that they should jump on?
Yeah, I definitely would stay tuned for the debate to trade the swings on that, and because I with Trump, you don't know what to expect, but you have to expect something. He's going to try something in that debate, whether that depending upon how you think that will be received by the electorate. Again, his antics in the first debate were not received well. That if that happens on the 22nd of October, you'll see him drift out further, at which point you'll be able to snap him up maybe around 3.2, 3.3. All that said, irrespective of the debate, I do expect Trump to firm in price here before Election Day. I don't think you're going to see him at around 3.2 going into Election Day, just because I think momentum, even but just by a point or two, will be on his side. I expect him, and we'll get to this in your next segment here on a couple battleground states, but I think you're going to see those national polls tighten to 7, 6, around there. I think it'll stabilize by Election Day. That alone will be enough to move Trump into 2.7 or 2.6. So I think Trump will be, if you own Trump right now, I'd say hold it. If you want to get involved and back Trump, wait till the debate. But if you see him start to drift for whatever reason in national polls out to 3.1 or 3.2, I think that represents a great opportunity to buy and then flip prior to Election Day.